Prince Harry stepped onto British soil, carrying the weight of two massive objectives that could define the rest of his public life. First, to bridge the devastating gulf with his father, King Charles III, whose ongoing battle with cancer had injected an inescapable sense of urgency and mortality into an already fractured family dynamic. Second, to secure the future of the Invictus Games, the crown jewel of his public life, the philanthropic endeavor he had built from scratch with his own sweat, passion, and military credibility. He wanted a genuine breakthrough. He wanted to walk away from London with a restored family alliance and a triumphant financial lifeline for wounded veterans. Instead, he got neither of those things. If you look at the sensational headlines, it would be easy to assume that the palace gates simply slammed shut in his face once again. It is easy to buy into the narrative that the cold, unyielding machinery of the British monarchy coldly rejected a son seeking peace. But that is not what actually happened. The real unraveling of this trip did not begin inside the historic corridors of Clarence House, Buckingham Palace, or Windsor Castle. It began in the chaotic, self-inflicted storm that erupted in the 72 hours before Harry's plane even touched the tarmac at London Heathrow. To truly understand why this pivotal trip collapsed so spectacularly, we have to look back at the months leading up to it. For nearly 4 years, the public relationship between the Duke of Sussex and the House of Windsor had been defined by total, unremitting warfare. The explosive Oprah interview, the tell-all Netflix docuseries, the record-breaking revelations in his memoir Spare, every single broadside had deepened the emotional chasm between Montecito and London. The bridge had not just been burned, the foundation appeared to have been pulverized into ash. Yet recently, something remarkable had started to shift. The aggressive tone from California had begun to soften. Harry appeared in international television interviews speaking with a newfound gentleness about his father. When asked about Charles's cancer diagnosis, Harry spoke with genuine warmth, noting that an illness in any family has a way of bringing people back together, of stripping away petty squabbles in favor of what truly matters. Behind palace walls and across private communication channels, word quietly spread that Harry wanted his children, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, to know their grandfather. He wanted them to understand their British heritage, to experience the land where their father grew up, and to build a real human connection with the monarch before time ran out. Because of this shift, royal commentators, critics, and longtime royal watchers had all begun to believe that a genuine thaw was underway. This upcoming UK trip was widely billed across the global press, not just as another routine charitable appearance, but as the definitive turning point. A fragile truce had been painstakingly assembled in the background. It was an olive branch cultivated through months of cautious silence and restrained public commentary. Everyone understood the high stakes. This was not merely about public relations or flattering press coverage. This was about whether the royal family could finally begin healing its deepest modern wound. This was the moment where that fragile truce was going to be tested under the unblinking glare of the global spotlight. Yet, just as the stage was set for what could have been a historic reconciliation, the entire mission went completely off the rails. It did not take days of awkward palace meetings or tense diplomatic standoffs to unravel the progress. It took less than 72 hours before Harry even arrived in the United Kingdom. Suddenly, the front pages were not discussing wounded service members, athletic triumphs, or emotional father-son reunions. Instead, the global media landscape exploded with a frantic, confusing, and intensely public dispute over logistics, accommodation, and security. Contradictory statements flooded the news cycle about where Harry would be allowed to sleep, who was responsible for his physical protection, and why certain royal arrangements had been abruptly turned down. The entire narrative surrounding the visit descended into utter chaos before Harry had taken a single step onto British soil. And this is the uncomfortable detail that changes the entire story. This was not a hostile media conspiracy. It was not a calculated smear campaign orchestrated by palace aides operating in the shadows. The mixed messaging, the sudden friction, and the explosive headlines were the direct result of tactical decisions made within Harry's own camp. The very thing Harry has spent the better part of a decade condemning, the toxic media frenzy, the leaked grievances, and the relentless tabloid circus, was being actively fueled by completely avoidable, self-generated drama. The clearest example of this dynamic emerged during the accommodation dispute that dominated the headlines. King Charles had reportedly extended an offer for Harry to stay in an official royal residence, with accommodations made available at Buckingham Palace. To any objective observer, this was an extraordinary olive branch and the ultimate solution to Harry's concerns. Buckingham Palace is one of the most secure, fortified, and heavily guarded private compounds in the world. Staying within royal grounds would have provided Harry with automatic, world-class armed protection from the Metropolitan Police at zero personal cost. More importantly, it would have placed him directly within his family's physical footprint, creating natural, private opportunities for conversation away from the intrusive lenses of the press. Instead, Harry turned the offer down. The Sussex camp let it be known that staying in a hotel was preferred, citing administrative complications and persistent concerns regarding personal security arrangements. To both royal insiders and the general public, the logic was baffling. You cannot spend millions of pounds in the High Court taking the British government and the Home Office to task over the removal of your full-time armed state security, only to publicly decline an invitation to sleep inside the most secure palace fortress in the entire realm. This contradiction laid bare what critics have come to describe as the ringmaster problem. problem. For years, Harry and Meghan have positioned themselves as innocent targets trapped inside a ruthless media machine that exploits their every move. But time and time again, the specific choices made by their operation hand their harshest critics the exact ammunition needed to discredit them. Instead of diffusing the tension, they inadvertently become the ringmasters of the very circus they claim they want to escape. By turning down the palace, raising security objections in public, and allowing the logistics of the trip to turn into a high-stakes standoff, Harry ensured that the focus shifted away from reconciliation and away from the veterans who needed his voice. By the time his plane finally touched down in London, the carefully cultivated goodwill of the previous months had completely evaporated. The atmosphere was thick with tension, skepticism, and frustration. And unfortunately for Harry, this chaotic start was only the opening act, because on his very first official day on British soil, an unexpected legal blow would land that would push his entire agenda even further to the brink. On the morning Harry kicked off his first official series of engagements in London, any hope of controlling the news narrative shattered. The High Court handed down a major ruling in his ongoing legal crusade against the British press. It wasn't the vindication Harry had spent years fighting for, it was a crushing, comprehensive defeat. The judge dismissed claims across the board, leaving Harry facing not just a massive blow to his public crusade, but potentially millions of pounds in legal fees. The timing could not have been more devastating. Just as Harry was walking into events designed to highlight wounded veterans and showcase his philanthropic leadership, news alerts lit up phones across the globe. Television networks broke into regular programming not to broadcast speeches about the resilience of injured soldiers, but to analyze Harry's courtroom catastrophe. When the Sussex camp released a furious statement branding the court decision a whitewash, it only poured gasoline on the fire. Royal commentators and legal experts immediately seized on the reaction, pointing out that attacking the integrity of the British judicial system while on British soil was fundamentally self-defeating. Instead of projecting the image of a statesman returning home to do good work, Harry looked like a man fighting a multi-front war he was rapidly losing. The crushing defeat fed straight into the existing media narrative of relentless chaos, completely drowning out the very purpose of his journey before the Invictus promotional campaign had even found its footing. This brought Harry to the undisputed centerpiece of his entire trip, the launch and promotion of the Invictus Games in Birmingham. If there is one arena in public life where Prince Harry is undeniably in his element, it is Invictus. This is the initiative he conceived, built, and championed with authentic military brotherhood. When Harry stands in a room full of wounded veterans, the cynicism that surrounds the modern royal soap opera usually vanishes. He is charismatic, empathetic, and effective. The UK had just won the fiercely contested bid to host the 2027 Games at Birmingham's National Exhibition Centre, bringing the tournament back to British soil for the first time since the inaugural London Games in 2014. On paper, this was the ultimate platform for Harry to remind the British public why they fell in love with him in the first place. Yet, once again, the event was instantly hijacked by an entirely different narrative, the glaring absence of Meghan Markle. Throughout the planning stages, royal watchers and media outlets had intensely speculated about whether the Duchess of Sussex would make a high-profile return to the UK alongside her husband. When it became clear that Harry was traveling completely alone, leaving Meghan behind in California, the absence itself became the story. Every single headline, broadcast panel, and opinion column fixated on the vacuum she left behind. Was she actively boycotting Britain due to unresolved bitterness? Was the couple deliberately pivoting to separate professional brands to salvage their damaged public standing? Or was the security dispute simply a convenient excuse to avoid facing a British public that has grown increasingly cool toward her? Harry found himself speaking to rooms where the primary topic of whispered conversation among attendees and reporters wasn't the upcoming athletic competitions in Birmingham, but why his wife refused to step foot in his homeland. The absence of the Duchess didn't shield the couple from controversy. It simply created a different kind of media frenzy. Instead of the Games being celebrated as a unifying national moment, the event felt overshadowed, awkward, and distinctly incomplete. Harry was left carrying the entire weight of the optics alone, navigating a skeptical press corps while trying to project confidence in a project that was quietly facing deep internal trouble. Because beneath the headlines about court losses and missing spouses lay the most devastating reality of the entire trip, the cold, hard mathematics of the Birmingham Games. This is the gut punch statistic that palace insiders and financial analysts have been watching closely. Securing the Birmingham bid was treated as a massive institutional victory, backed by roughly £29 million of British government and taxpayer support through the Office for Veterans Affairs. But that public funding came with a massive condition. The Invictus organization and Prince Harry personally were expected to match that commitment, raising another £29 million through major corporate sponsorships, philanthropic partners, and private donors to make the event financially viable. The actual fundraising haul? Just £4 million. That leaves a staggering £25 million deficit hanging over an event hosted in a city that had already declared effective bankruptcy. For an organization whose entire mission relies on goodwill and corporate generosity, this financial shortfall is an absolute crisis. And the reason for that £25 million gap goes straight back to the noise-to-cause ratio that has come to define Harry's public brand. In the world of corporate philanthropy, multinational brands and wealthy benefactors write massive sponsorship checks for two reasons: positive public relations, and unassailable moral alignment. They want their logos attached to uplifting stories of courage, triumph, and social impact. What they will not do is attach their multi-million-pound marketing budgets to a perpetual drama machine. When every single public appearance by Prince Harry is inevitably overshadowed by high court battles, bitter family feuds, leaked security demands, and endless palace drama, corporate boardrooms get cold feet. The risk of brand contamination becomes too high. The tragic irony is unmistakable. The drama didn't just generate annoying headlines for a few days, it directly crippled Harry's ability to fund the one cause he cares about more than anything else. The noise completely devoured the cause. For days on end, while the media debated hotel rooms, court rulings, and Meghan's absence, the desperate need for £25 million to support wounded service personnel barely registered in the public conversation. By the end of his London engagements, the harsh reality was settling in. The trip had not restored his popularity. It had not raised the money he needed, and worse still, it had completely failed to deliver the one personal breakthrough that was supposed to anchor the entire journey, a face-to-face reconciliation with his father. To understand why that door remained firmly shut, you have to look at the unwritten rules of the royal family, and the one red line that Prince Harry crossed that can never be walked back. For years, commentators, tabloids, and palace insiders insisted that the only path back to peace required a dramatic, cinematic showdown, the long-awaited royal apology. The narrative was simple enough. Harry was reportedly holding out for his family to acknowledge their role in driving him and Meghan away, famously demanding that they own up to their behavior. On the other side of the Atlantic, courtiers and royal loyalists maintained that the King and Prince William would never entertain a reconciliation until Harry and Meghan issued a full, unconditional apology for the damage their tell-all interviews and memoirs inflicted on the monarchy. Today, that entire storyline is completely obsolete. Nobody is apologizing, and nobody is expecting one anymore. The reality is that Harry has quietly dropped his insistence on a formal apology, not out of sudden humility, but out of sheer pragmatism. You cannot negotiate terms with a brother who has entirely removed himself from the equation. Prince William has made his position unmistakably clear. The bridge between the brothers is gone. William has zero interest in private summit meetings, mediator-led peace talks, or televised olive branches. From William's perspective, the trust was permanently shattered when private family moments, intimate conversations, and text messages were monetized for global entertainment. When the heir to the throne fundamentally cuts you out of his life, demanding an apology from him becomes an exercise in futility. At the same time, the idea that Harry and Meghan would ever offer an apology to the royal institution is equally disconnected from reality. In their minds, their departure and subsequent media projects were acts of survival and truth-telling against an unyielding institutional machine. Neither side is going to bend the knee. Neither side is going to admit fault. The standoff hasn't ended because of a breakthrough. It has ended because both sides have realized that the apology narrative is a dead end. Yet, even if the general grievances could somehow be pushed aside, there is one specific, immovable roadblock standing squarely between Harry and his father. It isn't the complaints about royal protocol, the arguments over security, or even the friction surrounding Meghan. It is a single personal wall called Camilla. When Harry published his memoir Spare, he aimed several sharp arrows at various members of the royal hierarchy, but his commentary regarding Queen Camilla crossed an unspoken, non-negotiable line. Harry publicly characterized his stepmother as dangerous, alleging that she had sacrificed him on her personal public relations altar in a long-term campaign to rehabilitate her public image after the death of Princess Diana. In television interviews, he spoke openly about her connections to the British press, portraying her as an operator willing to trade private family details in exchange for flattering headlines. For King Charles, those comments were not just standard tabloid fodder. They were an unforgivable personal betrayal. To understand why this is such a hardened barrier, you have to recognize the symmetry across the royal divide. Harry has repeatedly demonstrated that he will fiercely protect Meghan at all costs, regardless of the institutional fallout. Prince William will fiercely protect Kate from any perceived slight or public intrusion. And King Charles has that exact same fierce, uncompromising protective instinct when it comes to Camilla. Camilla is the woman who stood beside Charles through decades of public vilification, the one person who has been his emotional anchor through his most grueling personal and institutional crises. Charles has spent 20 years painstakingly integrating Camilla into the public consciousness as an indispensable, respected queen consort. An attack on Camilla is not an attack on the crown. It is an attack on Charles's life partner. And in this family, no one will compromise on the protection of their spouse. Charles cannot and will not welcome Harry back into a warm, uninhibited relationship while those characterizations hang in the air without retraction. It is a boundary drawn in steel, and neither man has any intention of backing down. So where does this leave the House of Windsor? With apologies off the table, William permanently disengaged, and the Camilla boundary firmly in place, the royal family has been forced to confront a sobering reality. Charles's health challenges have stripped away the luxury of indefinite delays. Life is moving forward, and the family is quietly shifting toward what insiders are calling Plan B. Plan B is not the triumphant, emotional reconciliation the public has been waiting for. There will be no balcony appearances together at Trooping the Color, no joint Christmas walks at Sandringham, and no shared charitable foundations. Instead, Plan B is a cold, functional, and realistic truce. It is a strategy of quiet compartmentalization. Under this framework, Harry remains entirely separate from the working machinery of the monarchy. He will continue his life in California, producing independent independent media projects, managing his philanthropic footprint, and building his commercial brand without the backing or burden of royal patronages. The royal family will continue their state duties in the United Kingdom, keeping the Sussex chapter strictly cordoned off from daily royal operations. When Harry visits the UK for specific personal obligations or judicial hearings, encounters with his father will be brief, strictly managed, and carefully contained behind closed doors, completely decoupled from institutional life. It is not peace, but it is workable. It is an acknowledgement that a complete family restoration is an impossible dream, but an outright public civil war is no longer sustainable. The ultimate lesson of this trip is one that Harry must confront if he wants the next chapter of his life to succeed. The Invictus Games proved that Harry possesses a genuine, rare gift for leadership when he channels his energy into serving others. But it also proved that as long as his endeavors are entangled with self-generated media drama, legal crusades, and unresolved family bitterness, the cause will always lose to the noise. If Harry wants to save the Invictus Games, secure the £25 million needed for Birmingham, and build a lasting legacy his children can be proud of, he has to step out of the circus ring entirely. The royal door may never fully open again, but the path forward does not require palace approval. It requires the discipline to let the past go, to accept a workable truce, and to let the work speak louder than the feud. Do you think this quiet, workable truce is the only realistic way forward for Harry and the royal family? Or is a genuine reconciliation still possible before it is too late? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this breakdown insightful, make sure to hit the like button, share this video, and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the stories shaping our world. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.